Welcome to Create More Intimacy, a podcast for men. I'm Elisa Stoddard, and I help successful men stop chasing sex and start building real connection so they finally feel close, connected, and wanted again. You've probably had this thought at some point. If we were just having more sex, this wouldn't feel so bad. Things would feel better between us. We'd feel closer. I wouldn't be overthinking everything all the time. And when you do have sex, there's a part of you that feels true. But I want you to consider something that most men haven't really slowed down enough to look at. It may not actually be sex that you are wanting. It may be what happens inside of you after. Welcome to episode 50. You think you want sex, but it's what happens after. When a man tells me he wants more sex in his relationship, I do not dismiss that. That matters. Physical connection matters. But when we stay there, we miss what's actually driving it. Because if you pay attention to how you feel after sex, there's usually a shift that goes beyond the physical experience. You feel more settled, more confident, less reactive. There's a sense of relief that comes in, like something that felt uncertain a few hours ago suddenly feels okay again. You're not wondering if she's pulling away. You're not questioning yourself in the same way. You feel more grounded, secure, and more like yourself. For a lot of men, that's the part that hooks them. Not just the sex itself, but how different they feel afterward, like they're back on solid ground again. What starts to happen, often without you even realizing it, is that sex becomes tied to how you feel about yourself. Not in an obvious way. Most men aren't walking around thinking, I need sex to feel okay today. That's not how it shows up. It shows up in how much space it takes up in your mind, how often you're thinking about it, how aware you are of when it's not happening, how quickly your attention goes there when something feels off between you two. It starts to become the thing that explains everything. If sex is happening, things must be good. If it's not, something must be wrong with me. And once that connection is in place, your brain starts using it as a reference point, not just for intimacy, but for the relationship as a whole. So instead of just noticing what's actually happening between you two, you begin interpreting everything through that lens. A short response feels like distance. A distracted moment feels like disinterest. Not tonight feels like rejection, even if that's not what she means. And again, this isn't something you're doing on purpose. It's a pattern your mind builds because it's trying to make sense of something that feels uncertain. At the same time, sex starts to take on a secondary role. It is no longer just something you enjoy together. It becomes the thing that brings you back to center, the thing that settles the questions, the thing that quiets the overthinking, the thing that makes you feel like you can relax again. And because of that, it starts to carry far more weight than it was ever meant to. This is where the shift begins, even if you don't notice it right away. You are no longer just wanting connection. You're depending on it to regulate how you feel about yourself. And that's a very different dynamic. Once that connection is in place, where sex becomes tied to feeling more settled, more certain, more like yourself again, the pattern starts to run without you even having to think about it. You may not be consciously telling yourself that sex is the solution, but your mind begins to treat it that way. Anytime something feels slightly off between you two, your attention starts to shift in that direction. It doesn't take a big moment or a clear problem. Sometimes it's just a subtle sense that the connection isn't quite there, or that something feels different than it did a few days ago. Instead of staying with that feeling or really understanding what's underneath it, your mind moves towards what it already knows brings relief. It starts looking for a way back to a place where things felt easier, where you weren't questioning anything, where you felt more grounded in yourself and in the relationship. That's where the shift happens. Because now, instead of sex being something that grows out of connection, it quietly becomes the thing you're hoping will restore it. You may not say that out loud. You may not even fully realize it, but it starts to shape how you show up. Part of your attention is no longer just being with her and being present. It's also on trying to figure out where things are going. You find yourself paying closer attention to her tone, if she's responsive, and the simplest cues that might tell you whether she's open to sex tonight or not. It's subtle, but it's there. I worked with a client who described it in a way that made this very clear. He told me that he would find himself a couple of steps ahead in his own head, trying to read the situation and anticipate whether that night might turn into something more. No, he wasn't literally pressuring her. And he would have told you he was being respectful and giving her plenty of space. But internally, there was a constant awareness running in the background. It's not like urgent exactly, but it's this quiet focus that didn't ever really turn off. And that focus changed how he showed up, even though he thought he was totally acting cool and normal. Because when part of you is watching and anticipating or hoping for that certain outcome, it creates a different kind of energy between you two. You aren't just present. You're also slightly removed because you're evaluating and waiting all at the same time. When sex does happen, then everything settles again. The tension you didn't fully notice before drops away. Your thoughts quiet down, and you feel more at ease in yourself and with her. For a while, it feels like things are back where they're supposed to be. But what's actually happening is that the pattern is being reinforced. Your mind registers that shift again, and it connects it back to the same experience. So the next time that uncertainty shows up, even if it's just in the smallest of ways, it sends you right back to the same place, looking for the same kind of relief. Over time, this creates a loop that's easy to miss while you're in it. You're not just wanting sex because you desire her, you're also wanting it because of how it changes your internal state. And because that internal state doesn't hold on its own, that need keeps coming back. And that's why it can start to feel like nothing really changes, even when you do have moments of connection. Because the thing you are relying on to bring you back to yourself is only ever doing it temporarily. And the deeper tension underneath it actually never gets resolved. Up to this point, everything that I've talked about is happening on your side of the experience. It's internal, it's subtle, and for the most part, it makes sense why it would develop the way that it does. But there's another side that most men don't see clearly, and it has a lot to do with why this pattern creates more distance instead of more connection. Because even if you are not saying anything directly, even if you believe you're being sly and totally handling it well, your partner can feel the difference between truly being desired for who she is and being needed for you to feel better. And those are not the same thing. When you desire her, there's a steadiness to it. You're drawn to her. You want her, but you're not relying on her response to determine how you feel about yourself. There's space in it. She can feel that you're choosing her, not depending on her. That kind of energy is easier for her to respond to, and it feels inviting instead of loaded and like there's only one right answer. It allows her to move toward you, not because she has to, but because she wants to. When you need her in order to feel settled again, that's where things start to fall apart. Even if you're being kind and even if you're being patient, there's something underneath all of that that feels different. It comes through in small ways, in how you initiate, in how you respond to her hesitation, in how quickly your mood changes depending on how things go. She feels that. Not always in a way that she could explain necessarily, but in a way that changes how safe it feels to engage with you. Because now it's not just about connection between the two of you. It starts to feel like she is responsible for something more than that. She's not just responding to your desire. She's carrying the weight of how you are going to feel afterward. And that is a really hard position to relax into. I remember a woman describing this to me in a session, and she struggled to put words to it at first. She wasn't trying to reject her husband. She cared about him deeply, but something about the way he approached her felt heavy and loaded. Eventually, she said, "It feels like if I say yes, then I'm taking care of him. And if I say no, I'm hurting him." Now, certainly that wasn't his intention at all, but that is how it landed for her. And when sex starts to feel like something that manages your partner's emotional state, it stops feeling like something you get to freely choose. It starts to feel like something you have to be careful with. And this is where a lot of men get confused. They think, but I'm trying, I'm initiating, I'm being affectionate, I'm helping around the house, I'm providing and doing what I'm supposed to do. But what they are not seeing is how the why behind it is being felt on the other side. Because when the underlying energy is about getting back to feeling okay, it creates a kind of pressure that doesn't need to be spoken out loud. And pressure, even when it's subtle, tends to shut things down. It isn't because she doesn't care or that she doesn't love you. It's because it no longer feels like a shared desired experience. It feels like something with massively high stakes attached to it. And when that happens, her response often changes in ways that don't make sense from your perspective. She may pull back more. She may hesitate. She may avoid you. She may seem less interested or more distant. And from where you are sitting, that reinforces the original problem. Now, it really does feel like something is off, which brings you right back to wanting sex as the way to fix it. This is why the distinction between desire and need matters so much. Desire creates connection because it invites. Need creates pressure because it requires. And when sex is carrying the weight of validation, reassurance, emotional stability, man, it stops feeling like intimacy and starts feeling like a whole lot of responsibility. That's a turning point. Once that shift happens, it's not just about how often you're having sex. It's about how it feels to both of you when you do. Once you see this pattern clearly, the next question usually comes up pretty quickly. If sex isn't the thing that's actually solving it, then what is? This is where most men initially go in the wrong direction. They think the answer is to stop wanting sex or to pull back or to try to control the desire so it doesn't create so much tension. That's not the shift. The shift is not about wanting less. It's about no longer depending on it to feel okay. That is a very different place to come from. When you remove that dependency, something really important starts to change inside of you. You are no longer looking to her response to settle your internal state, your doubts. You're able to stay more grounded, more steady, even if things are not great between you two. That doesn't mean you don't notice the distance or that you don't care about it. It means that it doesn't immediately throw you off and have you spinning out. You are not pulled into the same cycle of overthinking and questioning or trying to get back to a certain feeling as quickly as possible. There's more space between what's happening and how you respond to it. That space matters. I worked with a client who, once he understood this, realized so quickly how his internal state had been shifting based on what was or wasn't happening between him and his wife. And he said, I didn't even realize how much I was writing that. If things felt good, I felt good. If they didn't, I was off almost immediately. What we worked on wasn't reducing his desire for her. It was helping him build a steadiness that didn't depend on those moments. So that when things felt a little off, he didn't immediately go into fix-it mode. He didn't start scanning for what was wrong or trying to move things towards sex as a way to get back on track. He could still stay present and he could still stay engaged. He could actually pay attention to what was happening between them without that layer of urgency underneath it. And that changed way more than he expected. Because when the urgency drops, your energy changes. You're not approaching her with something you need from her. You're approaching her from a place where you're already okay and you want to connect from there. And that feels so different. Not just to you, but to her. And that's what starts to shift the dynamic in a real way. Not forcing anything, not controlling anything, but changing the foundation of how you show up. That is the work. Not getting more sex so you can feel better, but becoming the kind of man who feels steady enough that sex becomes something you share, not something you rely on to feel okay. When you stop relying on sex to bring you back to feeling settled, the first thing that changes is the pressure in the relationship. It's not something you have to announce or explain. It just shows up in how you carry yourself, in how you respond, in how present you are when you're with her. You're no longer watching as closely or trying to read every moment to figure out if there's a chance and where things are going. That background tension starts to fade, and with it, the sense that something needs to happen in order for things to feel okay again. And when that pressure drops, she can feel it. You might not have said anything different, but the weight behind your interactions is just different. And there is more room for her to engage without feeling like there's this ulterior motive and expected outcome. That's where things can begin to open back up. At the same time, your experience of the relationship changes. You're not as reactive to small shifts that used to just pull you in. You don't feel the same urgency to fix or restore something the moment it feels slightly off. There's more stability in how you show up. You're able to stay connected, even if things aren't perfect, which is something that most men haven't experienced in a really long time. That steadiness becomes the thing that actually creates connection, not the pursuit of a specific outcome, but the way you're able to be with her without needing something from her first. From her side, that difference matters more than most men realize. If she is no longer responsible for how you're going to feel afterward, it becomes so much easier for her to lean in. She doesn't have to manage your reactions or be careful about her response and what it might trigger in you. She can respond more honestly and freely without the same level of pressure attached. You all know the obligation sex doesn't feel that great. And that's when desire has room to come back. You didn't have to push for it. It's because the environment around the whole topic has changed. This does not happen overnight, and it doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy and you're having as much sex as you want. But it does change the direction things are moving. You are no longer stuck in that same loop of trying to use one moment to fix something that just keeps coming back and returning over and over again. You're addressing the part that actually needed attention in the very, very first place. If you've been telling yourself that more sex would just fix what feels off, I get it. It makes sense why. Based on your experience, looks like the thing that brings everything back together. And if you've also noticed that it doesn't last that long, that you end up back in the exact same place, that is a pattern worth paying attention to. It's pointing you towards something deeper, something that needs looking at. And when you start to shift this, not by forcing anything on her, but by changing how you show up, you give the relationship something it hasn't had in a long time or maybe ever. Less pressure, more space, and room for a different kind of connection. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. If something in this episode hit home, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more men find the support they need. And if you are ready to get help or take the next step, you'll find the link to book a free call in the show notes. I'll see you next time.